My boss's voice came thin and sharp through the cold, overlit conference room. It cut through the rows of my colleagues who sat scattered around the oak table, each of them intent on a notepad, a laptop, anything that wasn't me. I stood at the head, my palms glossy with sweat as I gripped the edges of my research slides, heart thumping so fast I thought they could see it right through my shirt. "Rosa," she said, waving a perfectly manicured hand at my display, "are you really proposing we waste another quarter on this?" Her accent clipped the English words, making them sound almost as if she were joking. But her eyes never joked. She liked questions that weren't really questions. I kept my voice even, but each word clawed up from the base of my stomach. "Yes, Anna, the early results from the protein modeling." She snorted lightly. "The early results, that's lovely, Rosa, but protein folding is not going to cure cancer on wishful thinking, is it?" Someone chuckled at the far end of the table, a quick choked sound. My slides, full of dense diagrams and lines of code, now looked like messy graffiti as my hand trembled, betraying the rage I was trying to pin down inside my chest. Anna pressed on. "Our investors aren't in the business of dreams. I need to show them deliverables, not experiments that sound like." She glanced at my title slide, which read "Predictive Folding Pathways in Oncogenic Proteins via Neural Networks, Magic Tricks." She gave a brittle smile. "All done then, you'll have the data repurposed for diagnostics by end of week." She moved on to the next presenter. I gathered my laptop, lips pressed together so hard I tasted blood, my jaw locked. I finished the meeting on autopilot, ignoring the whisper that always ran beneath these humiliations, "You're never enough." For the rest of the day, as the office's fluorescent light flickered overhead and Lisbon's distant tram bells sounded from the street below, I sat at my cubicle, turning over my rage, letting it slowly cool but not extinguish. Rage was oxygen, I needed it to keep moving. That evening, as the sky dimmed into stormy blue beyond the office glass, I stepped out and stood alone, shoulders up, fists tight in my coat. I looked across the city, past the sagging laundry lines and tiled roofs to the orange haze above the River Teju. I called my mother. She answered in her old flat in Bairro Alto, her voice as crisp as ever. "Oh, Rosa, so late. Is everything all right?" "Fine," I lied, "just making progress on my project." She caught the tightness, "Still on that computer nonsense." "It's not nonsense, me, you never." She cut me off, her voice soft but inexorable. "People work so hard in this world, querida, we do not have time for fairy tales. When will you settle? Give up this chase. You could be working at the university, teaching a good life." The line went heavy for a second. I almost hung up, but instead I said goodnight and cut the call, striding down the narrow streets to the nearest metro. A light drizzle prickled the back of my neck. I remembered, as the train jolted beneath Lisbon's steep hills, how every mention of my work was suffocated by that same tone of pity in my mother's words, the same resigned skepticism from my aunts at Easter lunches and my friends at the taberna. "Rosa, always with her big ideas," they teased. "Maybe one day she'll become the next Bill Gates, right?" Followed by laughter, then silence when they realized it was more likely I'd be just like them if I failed. At home in my tiny apartment, I stared at my wall, bare except for a single photo, me 9 years old, beaming in a white lab coat I won from a city science fair. My father, gone now, had built that cardboard PCR machine with me. He'd said, "Don't let anyone tell you what's possible," but even my own faith could be worn thin, especially on nights like this. I woke up before dawn and gave myself a command: if they're going to mock you, let them mock you because you were brave, not because you gave up. I made a thermos of strong coffee and opened my laptop, breath misting in the chilly room. Everyone I respected had turned away, the boss, my colleagues, my own family, so I became my best audience. I wrote code, ran impossible simulations, swapped messages with researchers in Asia and North America. I read papers till my eyes strung, filled notebooks with equations and sketches. Every day I felt the bruise of rejection, every night I dug deeper, refusing to drown. As weeks bled into months, work grew more unbearable. Anna cut my project funding, she reassigned my lab technician, she made it clear, focus on approved protocols or look elsewhere. By then, I was missing Sunday lunches with my family, skipping drinks with friends from university. I avoided the jeers, the knowing looks, the half-mocking invitations to be practical. Urgency made me bold. Late one Friday night, I slipped onto a Slack channel for open science communities, asking for collaborators. I found two: Sachin, a machine learning whiz from Bangalore, and Olivia, a postdoc in London. Together, by email and video calls that stretched into dawns and dusks, we built a decentralized network, pooled GPU hours, authored draft after draft. Sachin tuned neural network architectures I barely understood. Olivia chewed through protein databases like a machine. Winter in Lisbon is sharp and wet. I remember the little things during those months. How the city's trams sounded like haunted clocks at 3 a.m., how my breath fogged the window above my battered desk, how the world outside seemed a million miles away. Loneliness and rage sharpened me, kept me longing for a day when I could return triumphant or not return at all. We had nothing outside of our own sweat. Funding applications went unanswered. Emails from serious journals were quick, methodologically interesting but speculative. I lived off instant noodles, scraped rent from side freelance coding gigs. My university peers, now safe in their lecture halls, their small honors, sometimes sent well-meaning messages. Maybe let this one go, Ross and her. But late one February night, Sachin messaged, check latest run. It worked. I downloaded the output, heart stampeding. We had at last predicted an entire folding sequence of a notoriously unstable cancer protein, with accuracy well beyond what the best academic labs had hit. Weeks later, validation from an outside biolab in Switzerland arrived. Our model held up. My hands shook as I reread the data. I called Olivia, half hysterical, and we screamed into our shared screen. We hadn't just tried. We'd done it. We published, bypassing the journals, open science, free to all. The preprint exploded. Overnight, biotech companies reached out. 2 Boston professors wrote begging for the code. There were articles. I did interviews at 4 a.m. in my kitchen, sagging over my mug, feeling awake for the first time in years. But it took months for the full wave to hit Lisbon. By summer, investors were circling. My old office started murmuring about that open source breakthrough out of Portugal. Right, what's her name? It was too big to ignore. I was offered interviews, then funding, then the chance to lead my own lab, on my own terms. I left Anna's company without ceremony, badge on the desk, no goodbye. My mother called me that night, a note of something uncertain in her voice. Rosa, they were talking about you on the news, about your project. Are you coming back for Dia de Santo Antonio? I said yes, though part of me dreaded the homecoming. I packed up my notes, my battered laptop, and rode the tram out to Bairro Alto, watching golden evenings slide over the river. The celebrations were already starting, rows of tinsel over the streets, sardine smoke curling in the cobbled alleys. My family's apartment was thick with laughter when I arrived. My aunts, uncles, cousins, all packed around tables loaded with sweet bread, vinho verde, and cold bacalhau. The room fell silent as I stepped inside. My mother's eyes glistened. She hugged me so tight I almost couldn't breathe. My uncle Vasco, always the practical joker, clapped me on the back. Look, the prodigal daughter, you're on TV now, huh? Maybe you'll buy us a new fridge. There was laughter, nervy and uncertain. I smiled, something cold moving in my chest. Old teasing resurfaced, toned down but still there. Did you really make a computer solve cancer, Rosa, or is it just some buttons and lights? Asked my cousin Mariana, arching an eyebrow. I shrugged, letting the noise roll off. But then came the moment I'd rehearsed in my mind 100 times. Late after dinner, my mother and I stood on the dim balcony, watching party lights flicker across the city. She sipped coffee, brow furrowing. Rosa, I never understood what you were after. Is it really so special, this thing you do? I set my phone on the table, opened my emails. I let her read the latest, the collaboration request from a world-renowned oncology lab, invitation to lecture at MIT, letters from patient groups whose lives might one day turn on treatments built from our findings. I showed her a snippet of a video sent by a cancer survivor's family thanking us for hope. My mother's face softened as she scrolled, lips trembling. I didn't know it was like that. The next morning, I walked the neighborhood with her, passing neighbors who only glanced at me in passing, but now gave double takes. Word had filtered out, our Rosa doing things in America on the computers. Someone stopped us near the old bakery. Congratulations, Doutora, we're proud of you. My mother stood a little taller, pride mixing with astonishment. A week later, the festival committee asked me to give a small talk to local students, a lineup of teenage kids, half bored and half intrigued. I wore my old lab coat, yellowed at the cuffs, and brought slides of protein graphs and machine learning visuals, but tailored my words to the language of possibility, of struggle. As I finished, Anna, my old boss, strode into the room. A few company execs, eyes wide, stood behind her. She smiled, brittle as ever, but now with something else beneath. Dr. Ventura, I hope you'll consider collaborating with us on your next project, she said in front of the whole room. I held her gaze calm as stone. Thank you, Anna, I'll think about it. The students began to clap. Anna's face flickered, the applause ricocheting around her as she slipped away. That night at home, my mother laid a hand on mine while we watched the city breathe through our tiny kitchen window. You did well, Philha. You showed them they never thought you could, but you did. I laughed, soft and easy for the first time. I had to prove it to myself. Lisbon buzzed below, unaware of the years I'd spent scraping hope from old walls, fighting to turn anger into momentum. Rejection had forged me, their laughter had lit my fire. Now, standing once again among them with my proof undeniable in their eyes, I was home at last, not because I'd escaped them, but because I'd found my way back. And this time I was enough.